So since everything is pointing back to Sinai, right, where it is that the first covenant was made with the nation, and where it is that we commanded to believe Moses forever, and where it is that we say to Adonai, everything that you say we will do, right, and where it is that this covenant is, this marriage is established, we're going to go back there and see what were the events, okay, when the 10 words were actually spoken. So this is Deuteronomy 5. We have the first witness, which is in Exodus 20, but I want to read the Deuteronomy 5 version. So this is Deuteronomy 5, 23 to 33. And as soon as you heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, Aish, El Shaddai, you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and you said, Behold, Yahweh our Elohim has shown us his glory and greatness, and we have heard his voice out of the midst of the Aish, of the fire. This day we have seen Elohim speak with man, and man still live. Now what does this mean? It means that normally when Elohim speaks with man, people die. Now therefore, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of Yahweh our Elohim anymore, we shall die. For who is there of all flesh that has heard the voice of the living Elohim speaking out of the midst of the Aish, speaking out of the midst of the fire? Very important to understand when it comes to Gan Eden. Adonai willing, we will have that teaching soon, as we have and has still lived. Go near and hear all that Yahweh our Elohim will say, and speak to us all that Yahweh our Elohim will speak to you. This is us talking to Moshe. And we will shema and do it. And Yahweh heard your words when you spoke to me. And Yahweh said to me, I have heard the words of this people, which they have spoken to you. They are right in all they have spoken. Imagine, he's not saying that we were wrong for being afraid. He's not saying that we were wrong for saying that Yahweh should speak to Moshe and then we will obey Moshe. In fact, Adonai set up the whole thing to bring that about. Oh, that they had such a heart as this, always to fear me and to keep all my commandments, not some of them, that it may go well with them and with their descendants forever. Right? Why is it going to go well with you and your descendants forever if you keep all the commandments? Because you've kept the covenant. And there are blessings for the covenant. Blessings for keeping the covenant. And then there are curses for not keeping the covenant. We continue. Adonai says, Go and say to them, return to your tents. But this part we need to pay attention. But you stand here by me, and I will tell you the whole commandment, and the statutes, and the mishpatim, or the mishpat, the rules or judgments, that you shall teach them, that they may do them in the land that I'm giving them to possess. You shall guard, right? Be careful to do as Yahweh your Elohim has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. And this you need to pay attention. You shall walk in all the way that Jehovah your Elohim has commanded you. So guess what the way is? It is the commands, the Torah, the Messiah, the Word. We continue, that you may live, and that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land that you shall possess. Again, it doesn't say that you must believe in Mashiach in order for you to live. It says that you must keep the covenant and you will live. Why? Because the duty of the Mashiach, or the function of the Mashiach, is a mystery. Okay. So we tell Adonai to say, please don't speak to us. We say, please, when you speak to Moshe, Adonai agrees and says that that's right. In fact, that's what it is that he wanted. Then he says, tell everybody to go back, but you come here to me. He's just spoken the 10 words, right? So he pauses. He says, but you come to me and I'll give you the rest, the whole command and the statutes and the mishpatim, the rules that you shall teach them. And then he tells us, do not deviate from what I'm teaching to the right or to the left, and that the commandments are the way. Who is the way? Mashiach is the way. Who are the disciples, or how are they described? They're called the Notri in the scripture, right? The Nazarenes, and they're also called those who walk on the way. So Psalms 103 verse 7 says, if this is true, that Moses is the one who was shown the way, he shows his way to Moshe, right? John 14 verse 6, Yeshua said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. 100%, right? And again, this does not mean that he's saying you need to believe in Yeshua as Mashiach to be saved. He is making the claim that he is the Torah. Right? All these ideas of the way, the life, and whatever existed long before Mashiach revealed himself. Yes, it is all pointing to him, but within the contract, it doesn't say that you need to believe in him as a physical being. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So how does Scripture define these three terms? The way, the truth, and the life. So Genesis 18 verse 19, very important. Adonai speaking about my father, my hero, Abraham, says, for I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yehovah by doing tzedakah ve'mishvat, by doing righteousness and justice, so that Yehovah may bring to Abraham that which he had promised him. Imagine that. So there we see Yehovah confirming the idea of saying that Abraham was chosen because he will command his children and household to guard the way of Yehovah by doing righteousness and justice. So if we call Abraham our father, then guess what? We've got to guard the way of Yehovah by doing righteousness and justice. And we do that in order that we may keep the covenant promise and get the blessing. What is that blessing? It's the land, the kingdom. Okay? The truth. Psalms 119 verse 142. Your righteousness is righteousness forever, and your Torah is the truth. The life. Deuteronomy 32 46 to 47. Or maybe I'm rushing over the fact that the Torah is the truth. The Torah is the truth. Right? If anyone to tell you the truth, you are not going to find the truth. Let me not say you're not going to find the truth. The ultimate source of truth is the Torah. In fact, it is the truth. And then everything else that has truth contains pieces of Torah. Okay? It is the truth. The life. Deuteronomy 32 46 to 47. He, Moshe, right, said to them, take to heart all the words by which I am warning you today, that you may command them to your children. Right? We must behave like our father Abraham, that they may guard, right, to be careful to do all the words of this Torah. For it is no empty word for you, but your very life. And by this word you shall live long in the land that you're going over the Jordan to possess. Okay, once again, he's saying that the Torah is our very life, and that being in obedience to the covenant of which the terms and conditions of the Torah, that's how it is that you get life, or how it is that the Israelite has life, so we may live long in the kingdom, the promised land. Okay, so let's move on from there. So Mashiach is the word of Yehovah, aka the Torah, right? In the beginning was the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim. John 5 46 to 47. For if you, the church, believed Moses, this is Messiah speaking, you, the church, would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you, the church, do not believe his writings, how will you, the church, believe my words? Okay? So what is Messiah saying? He's saying, you can't believe in him if you don't believe in Moshe. 100%. Why? Because Moshe is the one who wrote the word of Yehovah. Moshe is the one that wrote the way. Who are all these things? It is Mashiach. This is the reason why it is that the resurrected Mashiach can only be, I would say not even the resurrected Mashiach, but this is the example that we have in the text. The Mashiach can only be identified by those who believe in Moses. Okay? Luke 24 verse 24. This is Messiah when he is resurrected and he meets the disciples on the way and they don't recognize him. Right? And he starts to reveal himself to them. This is how it is that he reveals himself to them. And beginning with Moshe and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Why? Because we were told to believe Moshe forever. And inside of that instruction was the ideas of the fact that no righteous individual in the kingdom can depart from believing Moses forever, including the Mashiach. And if the Mashiach came to teach that we are now under a new covenant with totally different rules, he was not supposed to be believed, and he was supposed to be rightfully executed. Heaven, the Father in heaven, Yehovah, would expect us to execute that Messiah. Let's move on from there. So the covenant process, right, from Sinai. We find the actual process now in Exodus 24. So we're going to read that. Exodus 24, 1 to 8. Then he said to Moshe, "Come up to Yehovah, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 of the elders of Israel." Okay, those elders are like the 70 which make up the Sanhedrin, the top level judges. "And worship from afar. Moses alone shall come near to Yehovah, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him." Moshe came and told the people all the words of Yehovah and all the mishpat, right, the rulings or judgments that the king has given. And all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words that Jehovah has spoken, we will do." And Moses wrote down all the words of Jehovah. He rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars, according to the 12 tribes of Israel, aka the church. And he sent young men of the people of Israel, right, the church, who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed shalem, right, peace offerings of oxen to Jehovah. Right? Why the young men? Because at that point, the priesthood hadn't been given over to Levi. The priesthood belonged to the firstborns. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he threw against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant. Right? So at that time, Moses goes up to Adonai. He's spoken to Adonai. Then we say everything that Adonai says we will do, and then Moses writes in the book. And then Moses takes this book, and this book is actually called the book of the covenant. Right? So at a minimum, the book of the covenant would include Exodus 12 up to 24, including the book of Leviticus, because at the end of the book of Leviticus, we have this verse. It says, "These are the commandments that Jehovah commanded Moshe for the people of Israel, aka the church, on Mount Sinai." Right? This is Leviticus 27, verse 34. So it could be a combination of, at a minimum, Exodus 12 to 24, and at a maximum, I think everything from Genesis right through to the end of Leviticus, probably maybe even some of Numbers. But anyway, at a minimum, Exodus 12 to 24. So then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, aka the church. And they said, "All that Jehovah has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient." And Moshe took the blood and threw it on the people, right, aka the church, and said, "Behold the blood of the covenant that Jehovah has made with you in accordance with all these words." So there we see the two different things. You've got the blood that ratifies the covenant, and then we've got the actual terms and conditions, the words of the covenant. And the church at Sinai said, "Everything it is that you have said inside of this book, we will do." And then Moses comes and he throws the blood on us to initiate the covenant, right? To ratify the covenant. blood manipulation. Now, what's fascinating about that is that we look at our brothers in the Yahudi with this idea of the blood being sprinkled on the people. The Midrash Makita de Rabbi Ishmael says, these are the statutes and the ordinances, or the Mishvatim, and the Toroth that Jehovah gave between himself and the children of Israel on Mount Sinai by the hand of Moshe. At this they said, we take it upon ourselves. When Moshe saw this, he took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. Vis-a-vis Exodus 24 verse 8, which we just read. And Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it upon the people, saying to them, you are hereby tied and bound and committed. Imagine that. So they're just giving an explanation of why it is that the blood was thrown onto the people. And I find it fascinating that in the same way that the first covenant was ratified, in the same way that the blood was used, we find that the blood of the new covenant was used in the same way. And where is that? Matthew 27, 24 to 25. It says, so when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. See to yourselves. And all the people, the church, answered, his blood be on us and our children. Imagine that. Exact same process. So how can it be, right? If we've got a new covenant, how can it be that we're still bound to the Torah, the old covenant? What's going on here? What is the new covenant actually? So this was a very heavy question for me. Well, I don't know, it's like 13 years ago when I was trying to find truth. And I was asking all the pastors, what is the new covenant? And nobody could actually explain it to me. Right? Praise Adonai that I keep seeking, crying out for the King, and he revealed it. Right? Where is it you find the new covenant? Not as in, we know that the blood of Mashiach is the blood that ratifies or begins or makes that covenant. Right? But what are its terms and conditions of this new covenant? What are you supposed to be doing? Right? Because the whole thing that we're learning is the fact of saying that once you come into a covenant, there are words of the covenant. There are terms and conditions. So yes, we've been taught that the blood of the Mashiach is that which establishes the covenant, but we've not been taught the terms and conditions. And that is a fateful mistake. Why? Because it means you've sworn to get into a covenant, but you don't know what the terms and conditions are. So you could be breaking it 24/7. And like we said, the punishment for breaking the covenant is that which happened to the being, the death that happened to establish the covenant is what you're going to receive. Which is why so many are going to die. And why so many are going to say to Messiah, Adonai, Adonai, and he's going to say, depart from me. Right? All the way up to people saying, I died for you. And he's going to say, depart from me, I know you not, you workers of Torahlessness. Why do you have to not be a worker of Torahlessness for the Messiah to know you? Right? The Hebrew word for know is yada, to be intimate with. It's like how a husband knows his wife. Because covenant, right? But you can be so strongly deluded that you can go to the point of thinking that you're dying for him, and yet he says to you, you are a worker of Torahlessness. You are not in covenant with me. I know you're not. Okay, so this is what the new covenant is. Where we find it, Jeremiah 31 to 37. So this is not a new idea, as in the covenant has been renewed many times. Okay, like we said, we're counting the covenants. There was a covenant from the beginning of creation, covenant with Noah, covenant with Abraham. Then we see a covenant with the nation, and then the covenant is broken and re-established. We see in Jeremiah that they re-established the covenant at that particular point, and I'm sure there's other witnesses. So the re-establishing of the covenant is something that's taken place many times. However, Jeremiah is speaking of a new covenant, and in this one, as you're going to find out, it's not the same as the others. There's something that's different. Okay? Let's read. Now, behold, the days are coming, declares Jehovah, When you hear that saying, you know that it's speaking about the end of days. When I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah, aka the church, right? These are the two wives of the great king, right? This is Leah and Rachel. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out to the land of Mitzrayim. My covenant that they broke, though I was their husband. Right? So we understand that this covenant is a marriage. Right? And here Adonai is speaking of his two wives. He says, I was a husband to them, declares Yehovah. That's why Mashiach will say, I know you not, which is language about intimacy, marriage, covenant. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yehovah. I will put my Torah within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Okay, so what's interesting there is that we see, he says that the new covenant will be made with the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah. It says, not like the covenant that they had with their fathers. It says, and in this new covenant, he then now all of a sudden switches to only speaking about or speaking to the house of Israel. And when he's speaking to the house of Israel, he says, I'm going to put my Torah inside of them. Why does he not say about the house of Yehudah to say, I'm going to put my Torah inside of them? You know why? Because as we described earlier on, the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, did so much adultery, right? Adultery and idolatry is the same thing, right? It's the same word. We did so much idolatry or adultery that he divorced us. Okay? Why? Because we are the ones which is that created our own. We violated everything it is that Moshe said. Almost everything that Moshe said. We're the ones that discarded Moshe. Our Jewish brothers up until today have not discarded Moshe. Yes, they are not 100% where it is that they're supposed to be. However, they don't need to be told to say you need to keep the Torah. Who needs to be told that we need to keep the Torah is the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And Adonai doesn't only say, I'm just going to tell them to say they need to keep the Torah. He says, no, this time to make sure that they don't forget. To forget means to not obey. Right? So in Torah, when it says, and Adonai remembered so and so, it doesn't mean that he forgot them and then all of a sudden he was like, there's no way in that thing that I forgot about this guy. Right? It means that he acted and spoke on behalf of Noah. And it says to forget. It says in the Torah that if we don't keep the commandments, then it means we've forgotten our Adonai. So we, the house of Israel, forgot our Adonai. We stopped doing the Torah. So he says, I'm no longer going to allow this to be something which it is that you are going to be responsible for the keeping of this information. He says, I am now going to write it in your heart. Okay? To write in your heart means that you're going to memorize it. And your heart, which all the issues of life spring from, will be covered by Torah, guarded by Torah. And therefore all the things of your life will be according to that which it is that is written in and on your heart. Right? The house of Israel are not going to whore anymore. We are finally going to obey internally. He's going to be really inside of us. He's going to make that happen. It's not going to be a human effort. Okay? Like how our Jewish brothers, they have, with Chazakah, they've kept themselves bound to the Torah. How do we know that this is like something new? And I'll be the Elohim and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, Know Yehovah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares Yehovah. For I'll forgive their iniquity and I'll remember their sins no more. Right? So we'll no longer teach. Why? Because in this new covenant, when Adonai restores the house of Israel, right, He is going to write the Torah in our hearts, and it means that we are all going to know the Torah 100% in our hearts, and no one's going to have to teach anybody. We will all know Him. We will all be faithful to the covenant, and again, that word knowing, intimacy. We will all be intimate with Him. Thus says Yehovah, who gives the sun for a light by day, and the fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. Yehovah Sabaoth, Yehovah of hosts is his name. Now listen to this carefully. If this fixed order departs from before me, declares Yehovah, then shall the offspring of Israel, aka the true church, cease from being a nation before me forever. Imagine that. Many people running around saying, oh no, we are the new spiritual Israel. Adonai has rejected the two houses that he chose. It is an abomination, right? Abominable understanding. Adonai says, as long as you can see the sun and the moon and the stars, it means that Israel still is his church, right? There is no new church. Jeremiah 31 verse 37. Thus says Yehovah, if the heavens above can be measured and the foundations of the earth below can be explored, then I will cast off all the offspring of Israel, aka the true church, for all that they have done, declares Yehovah. Right? He will never change his covenant. He will never break the promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There is no other group of people coming from somewhere. If you notice, with regards to the new covenant, it does not say, the days are coming when I'll make a covenant with the house of Israel, the house of Yehuda, and the Goyim, as in the Gentiles. There is no new covenant with Gentiles. Right? The new covenant is between the house of Israel and the house of Yehuda. The natural born sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, and the adopted by faith former Gentiles who join them. Okay, so let's move on from there. So the second witness of the new covenant. Okay, that's all well and good that that's in the Torah, but is it so in the New Testament? Hebrews 8 verses 8 to 13. I was like so shocked when Adonai showed me this. Right, this is the New Testament. Messiah has come, set us free from everything, right? And now he set us free from the punishment of sin so that we can sin more, or whatever it is that the crazy understanding is. Okay. So this is what is that Hebrews 8 to 13 says. It says, behold, the days are coming, declares Yehovah, when I'll establish a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Yehuda, aka the original church. Does this sound familiar? It is word for word what Jeremiah said. In fact, it's copied out of there. And if they said anything different, they would have been rightfully executed. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim, for they did not continue in my covenant. And so I showed no concern for them, declares Yehovah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yehovah. I will put my Torah, right, the writings of Moses, that which you are supposed to believe forever, into their minds and write them on their hearts. And I will be their Elohim and they shall be my people. So we see that the new covenant, though the blood is made in Messiah, though the blood is Messiah's blood, the terms and the conditions are the same. The Torah is placed in the heart. And like we just explained now, because specifically with the house of Israel, because we forsook the Torah. And they shall not teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, know Yehovah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will be merciful towards their iniquities. I'll remember their sins no more. In speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete, and what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. Now just note there, right? We've got all sorts of crazy teachings. People take the first part of that verse. In speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete. And they just like pause there and say that, yes, the old one is obsolete. And don't complete the text. Continues and says, and what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. It does not say that it is gone, right? Now, like I said, the only difference, so let me put it this way, the only difference between the old and the new covenant is the blood that it was made in, right? The old covenant was made with the blood of bulls and goats. However, the new covenant is made in the blood of the Mashiach. But we can see that the terms and the conditions, aka the Torah, is that which it is that still remains the terms and the conditions of the agreement. So yes, whether it is that the old covenant is totally obsolete, then it would mean that we would be in a state where the Torah is written on our hearts and we would not need to be taught. Why? Because we'd all have memorized the Torah and be walking out Torah observant lives just like the Messiah. Now we all know that that's not so, right? This is 2,000 years later after the new covenant was ratified by the blood of Mashiach. And this is the reason why the text is saying is slowly vanishing away, is because both covenants are in effect at this particular point, the old covenant and the new covenant. But regardless of the fact that both are in effect, the terms and the conditions remain the same. Right? Sin is still sin. Right? That's why 1 John 3 verse 4 says, for sin is the transgression of the Torah. Sin is to not believe Moses or to do opposite to what Moses said is what sin is. And it's still sin today. Why? Because that is the terms and the conditions for the covenant, whether it is the old covenant or the new covenant. However, there is more to the new covenant.